Boom. Hello, sir.
Hello,
Um,
Max.
basically, this is a pre-recorded interview with Alex Griffioen in our first episode of the Max and Vinnie's UAP show. And, we're very excited. We're going to cover European cases, and we are going to kick this off with the Soesterberg UFO case from 1979. And Alex over here, my buddy, he is a bona fide expert on that case and wrote a huge article and is working, I think, together with Bram Roza on a documentary about the case. So, sir, without further ado, um, you know, this is maybe the best kept secret in Holland in a weird way because there isn't that much media coverage about this case. Can you maybe elaborate on what the hell happened in 1979 and why this was covered up a little bit?
Sure. First of all, it's a privilege to be on your very first episode of the Max and Vinnie UAP show, podcast show.
Yes, yes,
Show,
sir. Yeah,
right.
show.
So thanks for having me on. Happy to elaborate on the Soesterberg case, which by my book is still one of the most important cases in Dutch UFO history. So, yeah, like you started. Um, Early morning, February 3rd, 1979. We had a couple of air bases in the Netherlands. This was during the Cold War, obviously. Um, I believe a few of these air bases were actually operated by the American Air Force, including the Soesterberg Air Force Base, right?
Yeah, it was called New Amsterdam, right?
Yeah. So they had their own
Yeah.
their own part there, where that was operated by the Americans. That was called Camp New Amsterdam. And then there was the Dutch part, um, and I think most of it was actually guarded by Dutch security personnel. And 12 of these security personnel were witness to a large triangular object, or at least a triangular formation of lights that approached the Air Force Base on the early morning of February 3rd. Um, what actually transpired is like it's a pretty well documented case because it was there was a reconstruction that took place 2 months later by Dutch media, who actually got 10 of these 12 witnesses in a room together and had them relive the whole experience. So we do have
So,
plenty of
yeah,
information about. Yeah.
yeah. So this was a radio documentary.
Yes.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I mean, if
yeah,
there was video, we would be better off. But we have to do with just the retelling of the story, basically.
yeah.
Um, but from start to finish, what we think happened. So it's kind of hard to make sense of the retelling if you weren't in the room with them, because there was a whiteboard or a blackboard, and they were drawing like schematics or the flight paths and everything, chalking it up on the blackboard, and we don't have a visual of what that looked like. So all we can do is interpret what they're saying and try to draw our own lines of how this thing must have crossed the Air Force Base. Um, and then we later talked to a witness, an eyewitness, Rob Jansen, who described that it was approaching the base from a single direction and passed directly over the base in a single line, whereas the actual witness testimony is that it made two passes over the base. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. Um, what did occur, though, is that Rob Jansen was the first to report it. He was with his Jeep together with another soldier at the head of the runway. And he
Right.
saw these lights approaching from the east, coming towards him, like in a straight path. And at that point, he got out of his Jeep and he contacted the head security, and he said, "You got to come out of your like the HQ, whatever they were currently stationed in. Come out and have a look at these lights that I'm getting. We have a UAP, a UFO approaching the base. Wow, it's actually the first time I'm using UAP instinctively.
Wow.
Good
Yeah,
job,
yeah.
America.
Paradigm
Uh,
shift.
yeah, we have a UAP approaching the base, and obviously a lot of people got out. They went to have a look, and it startled them because this was not unlike or not like any regular aircraft that they would usually get. And you have to keep in mind that these 12 people, they work at an Air Force base, right? So they're
Yeah.
used to seeing approaching aircraft and leaving, like departing aircraft.
Yeah,
So
so now they described what they saw as a triangular shaped aircraft
right,
with a big bright light in the middle when it was just above their head. But there were multiple lights, but there was one centered one, a big one, I think. Is that true?
I can draw a little quick schematic of what I think it looked like based
Oh,
on their reconstruction.
you're gonna Elizondo me.
No, nah,
No, I love it. I love it. Go ahead, man.
I
Go
will
ahead.
not blow your mind with this one. It's just I've been trying to get a visual of it myself, and I just re-listened part of the reconstruction, and it has to look like what I'm about to draw for you right now.
Right.
Otherwise, the reconstruction makes very little sense. My microphone wire is getting in the way. So here we go. It's a diamond shape.
Yes.
With 3 white lights in front, and then there was one like the red light, which was sitting right opposite of the front white light.
Right.
And the red light was constantly beaming down, and then the white lights were beaming forward, and in some instances they were beaming down. Apparently they were like you could
rotating.
Yeah, and they were extremely bright. So what occurred to these the witnesses is that whenever an aircraft approaches the runway with its landing lights on, then they would be pretty close to the fuselage, right, of the aircraft. They sit pretty close together, so it would be hard to tell if you're looking at one light or 2 lights. And in this case, they said the lights were clearly very far apart. And the given estimate of the width of the aircraft was about 45 meters, which I think I wrote it down somewhere in metric values that would be like 150 feet.
Okay, good. Yeah, our American listeners now that makes sense to them. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very wide aircraft. We didn't have well, obviously we did have aircraft that wide, but no fighter jets or anything.
No.
And plus, like I said, if it was an approaching aircraft, the lights would be very close to the fuselage of the aircraft, like the cigar-shaped middle section. These were on the wingtips, as far as you can call them wings, because according to witness testimony, this was like one solid triangular or like a trimmed diamond shape.
Yeah.
And this passed over the base. A lot of people got out and got to see it, and they all responded to it as if it was something that they had never seen over the Air Force Base before.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it was a very unusual, unconventional aircraft.
Yeah.
What made it even more unconventional is the speed at which it moved, which was, again, I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. It's 50 to 100 kilometers an hour, which translates to 30 to 60 miles per hour, which is very slow, especially for a craft of that size. It would just fall out of the air.
No, and it wasn't making that much noise either. It was more like a humming sound or like a moped in the distance or something.
Yeah. It was described by some as making no sound at all, and others described it as it was making a moped sound. And somebody else described that the sound would actually follow the craft. So only when the craft had already passed overhead, you would hear a sound, which is something that would usually occur when a craft travels faster than sound, right?
Now, if we take into account this is 1979, and there's no aircraft, especially not at that time of that size, that can move that slowly and not just crash.
Right.
It doesn't make sense at all. There were no drones at the time. Maybe there were in development. I think there was. They were developing the stealth, but there's no stealth that size, so it's still a big mystery.
Yeah, we did look into stealth, and one of the key witnesses to this case later said that he thought it would have been a stealth aircraft.
Right.
And there was the F-117 stealth fighter, the Nighthawk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which was the first stealth fighter to be operated, and that made its test flight, like its maiden flight on 1981, I believe, by Hal Farley. So that's 2 years later than our sighting in Soesterberg. Also, I think if you're doing a test flight, let's say like they mistook the test flight date by 2 years. I don't know. Let's say they did test flight in 1979. I doubt.
Why the hell in Holland?
Why would you go? Yeah, like why even cross an ocean?
Yeah, that you do that stuff in some Texas desert or something, you know.
Yeah, that's what Area 51 is for.
Exactly. So yeah,
you keep it there, and then but then again, like the F-117 only had a wingspan of like 14, 15 meters. So it was not nearly as large as what they saw at Soesterberg, which was like 40 to 50 meters wide, like the width of the runway. Then obviously you have the B-2 bomber, the stealth bomber, which does very well match the description of the Soesterberg craft. But then that had its first flight only a decade later in 1989. So there's like a 10-year gap that's very hard to account for.
No. The timeline doesn't make sense.
Right. And then what struck them most is that as the object passed overhead, by the time it reached Camp New Amsterdam, which is like the American enclave of the Air Force Base, they said that it turned off its white, like the bright lights. Maybe it kept the red light on. I suppose it did. Otherwise, it would have been invisible pretty much in the dark night sky. And they said it rotated a little bit, and then it shot off to the west with an incredible rate of speed.
Right.
And that's something that even Rob Jansen, like the eyewitness, he believes that it is a stealth aircraft by now, I believe, or at least some kind of experimental American technology.
Well,
but that's something he can't account for. He said, "Yeah, I have no answer as to why it didn't make any noise, especially given that it made a, what do you call that? Like it pulled through. Maybe it was attempting an approach or a landing, and then it changed its mind, and obviously when you change your mind, you need to put in some more throttle.
Yeah,
and that'll make noise. That'll wake up the entire base. So, yet nobody heard anything other than this humming noise, which stuck around for a few hours after too.
The humming noise stuck around.
Yeah. And there's a rumor by a guy who was working in the security operations, like the operational security department of the military. He was an engineer, and I believe it is him who said that there was a technical or electronic malfunction at the Air Force Base for days after. And even that there was a red light, which could have been the red light in the tail of this craft, was beaming down into some kind of facility where... But that's all speculation. We have zero witnesses that are actually corroborating this. So
so I did hear an account of a red beam. But I believe that the person who saw that either was lying. He's, I think, passed away now. But can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
The red beam?
Yeah, something being shot down somewhere into something.
Yeah. So there's a pretty well substantiated rumor that there were nuclear weapons at the Soesterberg Air Force Base. Actually, Robert Salas's book Phenomenon, he covers this story as well, and he makes no secret of it. He just states that it's a nuclear Air Force base.
Also, a big Dutch newspaper, I think, revealed in this January this year that they are quite sure there were nukes.
Yeah, at least there was permission to keep them there, so why wouldn't they be there?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the protest group that was protesting against nuclear weapons in the Netherlands,
massive.
They were stationed at the Soesterberg Air Force Base. So
there were massive demonstrations at the time. Ban the bomb. There were I think thousands and thousands of protesters.
Right.
So they're not there for nothing, And by the way, this is Cold War, like hardcore Cold War area. So era.
Yeah. So there's plenty of reason to believe that there were actual nukes at the facility. And what also struck me is during this reconstruction, I think it's even the security commander, like the guy in charge of the security personnel.
Jan Castenmiller, our guest?
No, Jan van Vliet.
Oh, Van Vliet. Yeah. He was a witness. Yeah,
he definitely was a witness. And he said that the object passed over the base, and then it hovered, like it held still for some amount of time, probably a couple of seconds, over an object that we won't further identify in this situation, like in this reconstruction.
Why not?
Kind of interesting, yeah,
Alex.
So, and they probably have a lot of operational security stuff to worry about. So they can't even identify the latrines or the toilets. Probably a lot of this stuff they don't want to give away to adversaries. So I assume there's some imposed secrecy there.
Definitely. So we're going to talk to commander in charge at the time, Jan Castenmiller. So I think Jan he was on the compound that evening, right? Or wasn't he?
I don't think he was. I think he was
Okay.
the press officer for the Air Force Base,
Right.
who had to deal with communications both internally and externally. And he was the person who conveyed the explanation that was given by the base commander van Gastel
Right.
to this 12 military security personnel.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate about Castenmiller is that in retrospect, he thinks this explanation, this identification made no sense at all.
No.
So the official explanation was that it was a mirage, or like a Fata Morgana.
Yeah.
And that would require certain conditions that might have been there, but a Fata Morgana or a mirage could never pass overhead. It requires like
No.
an object in the far distance. Like
No. And the Fata Morganas don't make humming noises and
they don't.
shoot off light on your face.
Right. So, but they could not come up with anything else. And I think there's this urge, or at least back then there was this urge to explain the sighting, because a lot of people were asking questions about it, were worried about it, and also people in the neighboring towns were also seeing stuff.
Right. There's this great account by a local girl at the time, Josie Soesterberg, and you guys interviewed her, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, she is not willing to do that again. But yeah, she actually chased that thing on her horse.
Yeah, she went to look for it.
Yeah, she's a boss. But let's go back to the radio documentary where all 12 men were interviewed. Well, they all of them seem, quite astonished. Just utter confusion
Yeah.
about what the hell they just saw. And this was pretty fresh. It was about 1 or 2 months after the incident. I think the incident was on the 6th of February, and they were interviewed in April.
Yeah, it was the 3rd of February, the incident, and then 27th of April was the reconstruction. So close to 3 months.
Okay. Yeah. So, some of these men, they reacted in a real Dutch way. Like, we should be able to explain this. Well, let's give it some time. And other guys were like, no, no, this was a UFO. And by the way, I saw this before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah. So obviously these people were in like a semi state of shock at the time. They were just very scared of what was happening. So I remember the guy at the head of the runway. He had this a rookie with him,
Right.
and the rookie got really, really scared.
That was Rob Jansen, right?
Rob Jansen had the rookie with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't mention his name because we contacted him and he didn't appreciate being asked about this anymore. So,
Oh.
yeah. And yeah, it kind of left a big impression on him. And then other guys, when they like the 10 of them who saw this craft, obviously they could connect with each other because they'd all seen the same thing. But when they tried to tell their friends about it or their family, they would get laughed at, they would get ridiculed, and oh, it must be a guy. Where is this dude again that sees like the Martians or the which was common at the time, and it might still be common now. Luckily, with all the Pentagon revelations and the studies were
it's no more paranormal bullshit. It's just new normal now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit less ridicule now, but there definitely was back then.
And, yeah, definitely. Look, this didn't just happen to these men. A decade later, the Belgian Air Force commander Wilfried de Brouwer actually had his men chase one of those triangles because there were a lot of observing. They observed a lot of them in that time, and he actually made a statement on television, and he got a lot of abuse for that.
Mm-hmm. I know he did.
Yeah.
And that might also be the reason why we don't see a lot of it in a regular media, right? So even though this case was very well documented, there were 12 witnesses, so like the media could get all the content and all the descriptions they wanted. I think they were just a little reluctant to get it out after the initial VPRO radio reconstruction.
Yeah.
Which I think was nice and kind of a relief for them to just share their story, like for once and for all, to get together again.
But in hindsight, it's an incredibly important document now, right? And I think the total length of that documentary is over an hour.
Yep.
And I'm planning on making a transcript in English. People should be able to read it, because there's so much international interest into this case, because it's one of the most compelling cases ever. Because there were so many eyewitnesses, and there's nothing that could be really explained about what these men saw.
Right.
But what I am very curious about, and now I'm thinking Lou Elizondo, there must be some data, some radar data. New Milligan must have seen something. It can be there's nothing. So I might do a little WOP-verzoek. That's the Dutch equivalent of a FOIA request. So yeah, I want some radar data.
Yeah, and there isn't any, because if it was tracked on radar, they would have scrambled jets to intercept, and that's the whole reason why all of this was just shrugged off. Like we don't have an explanation, but it wasn't captured on radar, so it wasn't a physical object.
Hmm.
And then if it's not a physical object, it's obviously not a threat, and therefore
Right.
it won't be won't be investigated any further.
Little breakup.
Little
Yeah.
breakup. Okay.
Yeah, I see you again. Yeah.
So yeah, there is no radar data as far as we know, and we did check, we did chase the Department of Defense here to give us all they had on it.
I know you did. Maybe tell a little bit about your quest on finding out everything about this case. What made you pursue this? Because you wrote a great article. By the way, I'm going to plug your website, www.zaken.nl. There's also an English translation. I don't know if you've uploaded that to the site, but definitely read that, check it out. And Alex is also one of the guys who are running the UFO hotline in the Netherlands, ufomeldpunt.nl. So yeah, you're a busy dude.
I am, but it's really enjoyable work. Like this is all like a grassroots initiative. At least the reporting center is, and we do this stuff on the side. We both have full-time jobs,
Right.
but it's really so gratifying and enjoyable to do. The quest. I remember watching this short documentary on RTV Utrecht, which is a regional television station.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it a couple of
I've
times.
seen it. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like 18 minutes long. It starts with cute music, and there's this woman getting in a Jeep and then driving off to Soesterberg to ask around, basically, to ask people about what they had seen, what they know about this incident. And she ends up talking to a garbage man, I think, and the garbage man says, "Do you know who you need to speak to? You need to speak to our local UFO expert." And he just walks around to the back of his garbage truck, and there's this guy standing in front of a gas station.
He's just there. Yeah.
He's just there. I figured maybe it's a coincidence or this was all directed. I don't know. And he's there wearing his red wind jacket and a nice 80s mustache, and he just goes off. He goes off. He starts sharing everything he knows about UFOs, and I'm like, shit. If there's anybody in Soesterberg who could tell me more about this incident, or at least the people that were involved in it, it's probably him.
Yeah, like the people standing around, they were like, "Oh, there he goes again,"
Yeah. It's the local crackpot.
Yeah.
But so I figured sometime later I would just call the gas station. I tried identifying the gas station first because I wasn't very familiar with the surroundings, even though Soesterberg is practically my backyard. I did some Google Street View searching. I found the gas station. I called them up and I said, "Hey, some time ago there was this television crew shooting an item, and there was a dude standing in front of your window with a red wind jacket and a mustache. And I was wondering if by any chance you know who he is and if I can get in touch with him." And he said, "You're speaking with him."
It was him.
Yeah, it turns out he operates the gas station.
Right.
Which was fun. But I didn't I didn't often go to Soesterberg for no reason until I had children, and there was this indoor playground there, and I had to be in the it's a little neighboring industrial area, but still, I figured on my way back home, I just swing by his place by the gas station, see if he's home, and ask him if we can have a cup of coffee sometime.
Right.
And he was the nicest guy, the nicest dude. basically everything I expected from him after seeing the little documentary.
Right.
So at a later point, I decided to get in touch with him again and have Bram tag along, because he was doing the documentary, like a full-length, feature-length
Yeah.
documentary about the Soesterberg case, but also cases in the vicinity of Soesterberg,
Right.
which are often equally interesting, although not as well documented. And
let's talk about that a little bit. There's this 1977 case, right? And actually, I think there also was a crash because of that.
yes and no.
Hmm.
So there was a story going around that there were two F4 Phantoms that
Right.
were allegedly scrambled from Soesterberg Air Force Base to intercept a UFO.
Yeah.
And I think these are two stories that somehow may have merged over time into a single story. I
Right.
think the actual UFO is the UFO we just discussed, and then
Oh.
the F4 Phantom crash is something else entirely. They didn't even depart from Soesterberg. They departed from Wilderad in Germany. It was a very unfortunate crash that had two casualties.
Yeah.
I don't know how the story got into existence, even where how the UFO component got in there. But there were certainly different other UFO incidents in the same time.
Yeah. Well,
and there still are.
Yeah. Because Soesterberg is still the UFO hotspot in the Netherlands. Still the most sightings.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a confession. We did this data dump to this magazine, who asked for a data dump so they could generate a heat map. And I noticed that there was this huge red, in the heat map, a red hotspot around Soesterberg, which we thought was very striking, because obviously it's very weird given the population density of Soesterberg, and it's not a big city at all. So
no,
it's weird for it to have that many UFO reports. Then I later realized that if you were to go to Google Maps and just enter the Netherlands, it would drop a pin right in Soesterberg's backyard, which is the geographical center of the Netherlands.
Oh, that's awkward. Yeah.
It's really there's one restaurant that's practically bordering on the Air Force Base, and that has the pin in its front yard.
Wow.
And then I thought, ooh, shit, what if a lot of people submitted UFO reports and they just didn't specify a place, and it would default to the Netherlands? And that would account for a lot of, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of reports. So, but still, when we did a call for witnesses for the UFO case on Facebook, we geo-targeted it to I think a 5-mile radius from Soesterberg, 5 kilometer. And a lot of people came in with their own stories and their own accounts, and even as recent as I think 2009, where a guy, an 18 or 19-year-old guy who had just moved there, was exploring the woods. There's very green surroundings. He was exploring the woods, and he came up to this open, sandy area in the middle of the woods, and he noticed this weird dark gray spherical or cylindrical object that was just sitting there. And at first he thought it was might have been modern art, because it was so clean and smooth.
Right.
Or maybe even a monument, because the Soesterberg Air Force Base also has a monument for those who survived, who got killed in the Second World War. So it could have been either modern art or a monument. And then he got down and he realized that it wasn't sitting on the ground. It was just hovering like a meter above the ground. And that's when he suddenly felt very, very weird. Like he got scared and nauseous even. And he dove behind the bushes and he crawled his way back out of the woods, and he never saw it again. But he also had trouble going back into the woods ever after. He's just kind of traumatized by this sighting, even though there was nothing malevolent or anything going on. It kind of challenged him, I think, mentally as to what he was seeing. He couldn't really explain. So
we need to talk to this guy.
Yeah, we attempted, and he was actually keen on joining us again for a trip into the woods. But yeah.
All right. To be continued, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Alex, thank you so much for your great context. And I hope you can jump in tonight. Because
One more question. Did you have
Sure.
any of these pictures that I sent you? I just want to.
Yeah, I got him.
Okay.
And I will edit it.
All right. You got to show him. It's funny because it has a picture of Jago, the guy who I found at the gas station.
Right.
And when Bram and I joined him or went to visit him, we asked him if you know any other people from this documentary, because Soesterberg is a pretty small town, right? Everybody knows everybody. Bring them along, and we'll have this nice conversation about what everybody knows about UFO sightings. And this very skeptical guy, Cor, came along, the guy with the white hair you'll see in the picture. He came along. We took them to this super brown old Dutch cafe. We had a meatball sandwich and a few beers. And he started going off too. Like, he had heard about people from his church community who had seen disc-shaped craft over the woods or in the Leusterheide, which is the like a heather somewhere near Soesterberg.
Yeah.
They would just take off vertically and shoot off, and people that you would never expect to have these kinds of stories, suddenly they come out of the woodworks and they tell that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. It's a mystical environment.
I feel a road trip coming. My man Vinnie, I know he's up for it. So we'll make this yeah, we're going. We'll probably camp out. Cool. So, hey, Alex, I hope I see you later. Yeah, if you can jump in for 10 minutes would be cool. Talk to Jan Castenmiller and, thank you, brother. And, go to these guys' websites. Is there something you are working on right now? Because I think, you should be podcasting anyway. But
that's exactly what we'll be doing. But we're going to be focusing on the Dutch community. We're going to be interviewing Dutch witnesses and just having them share their story. And we'll be organizing the night of the UFO. We're copying the date from the Americans. There's an American initiative on July 17th, where we'll all just try and mobilize people to go outside, get a camping chair, maybe like a hip flask of whiskey or whatever that keeps you warm, and then
some barbecue.
Yeah, some barbecue. Do some UFO sky gazing.
Heavy drinking.
Maybe.
Look, I'm excited you guys are going to start your Dutch UAP podcast. So, people, follow this guy, subscribe if you're Dutch, or even if you're not Dutch, subscribe. And I hope you and Bram, that me, Vinnie, you and Bram, we can collab on this because we want to cover European cases. But let's collab and make some cool stuff together too.
Sure thing. Cool.
All right. Okay, brother. I hope I'll see you later. Okay.
Good luck. And
thank you.
Yeah, I tune in later if I'm not verhinderd.
Okay.
Go and translate that. Okay.
All right. Ik zet hem nu uit, ja?
Is goed.
Wacht even.